Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge University. I forget what episode number it is. It's on the screen. It was in the title too. We're going to be talking about slip joint knives. This is going to be a basically 101 level introductory course showing you how slip joint knives work. There are two main types of slip joint knives. There is the traditional slip joint. This is a new version, but it's got the traditional technology in it. And a detent slip joint. We're going to look at both. We're going to start off with the old school stuff. So come on down to the tabletop and learn about slip joint knives. As I said in the introduction, there's two main types. The traditional type relies on a spring. The steel on the spine of the knife, that is a spring. It's a piece of metal that goes along there, and it wants to bend down like this, and when you open the knife, the metal on the tang of the blade pushes that spring up, but that spring wants to come back down, and there's lobes on the steel there, and I'll show it in detail soon. See how it pushes that up, and that's a half stop. It's a 3/4 stop actually, or 2/3 stop. But then when it's all the way open, you can see that spring comes down and it's pushing down on some steel that's left over in the knife. Now, some kind of spring is what's doing that. Let me just take this thing apart so you can see exactly how it works. Here we are. I've taken one of the handle scales off. We've got this great big spring at the back. It's held in place with two screws. So these two screws back here go through it. That holds the spring in place. And that leaves this arm to move up and down. You can see the tang of the blade. It's just got a little small section coming out the end. Now, this one's got a rounded end here. Some of them have pretty much 3 flat sides. It really doesn't matter how they're made like that, except you are always going to find one flat edge here and a parallel flat edge here, basically parallel with the spine, those two lines. When the knife is closed, this spring here is pushing down and it's holding onto that piece of steel so it doesn't want to move. But if I open the knife, you're going to see that it pushes that spring away. It's pushing the spring up because the steel's, getting in its way right there. And as I open the knife, this one's got sort of a little divot right at the apex right there. And that's what I called the half stop. So it wants to sit in there. It's got 2 points of contact, and that holds it right where it is. Now, a lot of them, they've got the flat spot, halfway. So then it's a half stop. But that's what it is. That spring is always pushing hard. And now you see the flat edge there. As this comes around, it wants to hold on to, the flat edge there and hold it down. Now, you always need 3 points of contact for a blade to be held steady. In this case, 1 point of contact is this pivot stud. Spring is pushing down on the steel right here. Those 2 points of contact. And the third point of contact is right there. So those 3 things hold the blade steady. So it's open, and it takes a fair bit of force to push down on the blade again, which pushes that spring back up out of the way so that you can close it. It's really that simple. Now, one little extra tidbit. If you want to take a knife apart and clean it, if I take this blade completely out of here now, it's going to be a challenge to get it all back together because you have to overcome that spring tension while putting everything back in place. Can it be done? Of course it can. It's just tricky. So if you're brand new to knives and you're doing this with slip joint knives for the first time, do it on a slip joint knife that has a fairly weak spring. By that, I mean a knife that doesn't take a lot of pressure to push on here to make the blade start to close. Practice on those because it's going to be a tough job to get that back together. So I'm not going to do that right here. Lockback knife is very similar to this, except for, in the blade here, there's going to be a notched out section where this tooth, this piece of metal right here that comes down, fits into. And once it's fit in there, you can't get it back out unless you do something different. I'll make a different video about lockback knives, so I'm not going to cover that now. That's all I'm going to say about it. This one is a little bit unique because it's got a pin that you can put through here, and that stops the lock arm from going up. So you can actually lock this knife in the open position, but technically it's still a slip joint knife. Some of you are wondering what this is. This is a stop pin, and it has nothing to do with the slip joint part of it. That's for when I close the knife hits that pin and it stops the cutting edge from slamming into the steel here and getting dull. So that's a fairly new thing in the grand scheme of life. The earliest slip joint knives didn't have something like this at all. And so then when you closed it, it would often slam into the bottom and you would, impact the edge at some place and roll that edge or chip it. This is a DETENT slip joint knife, and it works on a totally different principle. I wanted to take this knife apart anyways. I'd given this knife to my father years ago, and when he passed, I got it back, and it needs a cleaning. And, these liners are starting to corrode a little bit, so I need to take care of that because I want it to last a long time. This one, it's still together because there's screws here that hold it together. I just took the cover plate off, the G10 off the one side. This is what holds the knife open and closed. We've got an arm here with a detent ball, and the blade has got little holes in the side of it where the detent ball sits into. You can see the hole right there now. And so when I open the knife, that's a spring pushing down, and it pushes that ball into the hole. There's another one on this side as well. It does the same thing when it's closed. There's another hole right there, and it holds it closed. Let me finish taking this apart. This has a double detent, both on the open and closed. You can see these holes on both sides that go all the way through. That one's got a little bit of schmutz or something in it. This thing really needs a lot of cleaning, doesn't it? And here's that detent arm. It's sticking out, so it's not flat. It's turned into a spring, and you push back on that spring to make it move. So that's all the power. And when that's sitting in this hole, that spring sitting in that hole, it doesn't want to turn to overcome it. Now what happens is you have to put pressure into the system to make the ball climb out of the hole, and then it rubs along the side. So you see that arc right there until it gets to the other hole. Push it out of the way, and it overcomes the detent, and you can feel like a click. It's not really a click, but you can feel it change. And then you go all the way around, and that little ball then goes into that hole, and that's what holds it closed. So that's how it works. It's a very simple technology. Some of the knives that have detents only have one side. Now that's not enough. That makes it too weak. It makes it too easy to close the knife. That's how a detent slip joint works. If you've got any questions, leave them down below in the comment section. I read all the comments on all my videos. Any legitimate comment, I read it and I answer it, even if it's a video from 10 years ago. A detent is also used on liner lock knives and on frame lock knives, generally to hold the knife blade closed. And it does it the same thing. It uses a hole, but it only uses it on the closed position, not on the open position. The double detent slip joint uses the two detents on both the closed and the open. Just before I finish off this video, I'll show you what this looks like with the extra little thing where it put back together, or you can just watch the video review of the 9165 by Sanrenmu. If you're wondering what this knife is the 9051 MUC by Sanrenmu. Here's the bonus material. For the 9165 by Sanrenmu, it's got this pin that sits here. You push it with your finger. It's got a little rim there that you can grab. You open the knife up, and you can put that pin right in there, and it locks it. And now, there's still a little bit of rock there, but you can hit that spine and it doesn't close. And it's never come loose on me. It's always stayed right there. So it's kind of a cool little feature. I reviewed this knife quite a while back, so the video of this is not quite up to par with what my current videos are. But hey, there you go. If you're interested in a knife like this, you might still be able to find it somewhere. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Huge shout out to my financial supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. I appreciate it a lot. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb.